everyone, welcome back for a little TLC. Hopefully everyone is doing well, and this week I pray that the video will turn out well because I was struggling last week. My formatting was all off, but nevertheless, I'm excited to be back with another video. We are talking about being consistent with our New Year resolutions, and I mean, it is the last Monday of January, so hopefully you haven't fallen off from your New Year resolution already. But if you have, and I have learned that some people have, then I do hope that these techniques will still be beneficial to you as you try to get back on the wagon and as you try to move forward. I was going to go in a different direction for some of these tips, but it seems like every sermon that I have heard, people that I have been talking to, and just general confirmations from God have brought me to this place. So for the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be talking about things that we can change in order to keep us consistent with our New Year resolutions. And the first thing I'm going to be talking about changing is your mind or your mindset, okay? So, the first thing that I want you all to consider changing in order to be consistent with your New Year resolution is your mind. There are so many tips, quotes, and all of that that talk about the importance of your mindset and changing that, first of all. In the mental health world, we talk about in cognitive behavioral therapy, it's a term for you, that's one particular modality. We talk about the CBT triangle, which talks about your thoughts, your emotions, and your behaviors. And we always say that your thoughts impact your emotions, which then impact your behaviors or your actions. So it's really important for you to get rid of some of the negative thinking or thinking that is irrational, or figure out techniques for your thoughts or your mind, because your thoughts, your mind influences your emotions and your actions. There are several quotes that I found, one from Marshall Silver, that says everything begins with a thought, and thoughts are turned into plans, and plans into reality. And then even Charlemagne the God said everything starts with a thought. Your thoughts become things, and anything that your mind can conceive, you can achieve. So in the mental health sphere, in the practical sphere, folks are talking about the importance of the mind. And then we know from scripture that we are not to be conformed to this world, but transformed by the renewing of our mind. I was actually looking at that scripture, which comes out of Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. And it says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to present yourselves, your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing unto God, which is your reasonable service," or your true and proper worship. And how do we go about presenting our bodies unto God as a living sacrifice? Well, the next verse, verse 2 says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." So again, there's sort of this triangle. In order for us to present our bodies as a living sacrifice, we have to be renewed in our minds, okay? Then in Ephesians chapter 4, verses 17 through 24, Paul is talking about how the Gentiles are futile in their thinking, and the word futile means useless or purposeless. But then he says that those who are believers, that's not what they learned. It says that believers were taught to put away their former way of life, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, and to instead be made new in the attitude of your minds, and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. So in every sphere, in every sense of the word, in every arena you may be in, we learn that it is important for us to be renewed in our mind, and we learn how important the mind is in shaping our behaviors, our actions, and everything else that we have going forward. So y'all, the first thing that I want to encourage you to change, if you want to be consistent with your New Year resolution, if you want to get back on track with your New Year resolution, is your mind. All right. It's incredibly, incredibly important. I'm going to give you 3 tips for how you can change your mind. And then I'm going to move on out your way, as the veterans say. Okay. How can we be more consistent with our New Year resolution? By changing our mind. The first tip for changing your mind that I'm going to give you is to make up your mind. Make it up in your mind that you are going to commit to your New Year resolution this year. Make up in your mind that you are going to accomplish whatever goal it is that you said that you have set out to accomplish. I think a lot of times we have sort of like this wishy-washy type of mindset, where we're like, this is what I want to do, but if I don't do it, then, and we make excuses for ourselves even from the very beginning. And that's not the way that we should be. We should be in the very beginning, at the offset, having a made up mind that we're actually going to fulfill what we said we're going to fulfill. It's time out for that wishy-washy stuff. It's time out for being halfway in and halfway out. Make up your mind that you're going to do it this year. There's a song that I used to sing with my mom and aunt that said, I've got a made up mind to live for Jesus and I won't turn back. So your particular New Year resolution may not have anything to do with Jesus necessarily, although seeking God should be on your New Year resolution list. But make up your mind to do whatever you're going to do. That's really the first tip. Make it up in your mind. Have like a firm conviction that you are actually going to do this. Starting today, make up your mind. The second tip that I'm going to give you is to capture every thought that is contrary to you pursuing or achieving your goal. I'm not saying that when you make up your mind that you're never going to have any doubts about yourself, that you're never going to doubt that you're going to achieve your goal. But it's very important that you do not stay in that doubtful place, that you don't just let your negative thoughts run rampant, basically. There is a scripture that comes out of 2 Corinthians chapter 10, starting at verse 4. We'll start at verse 4. Actually, I'll start at verse 3. So 2 Corinthians chapter 10, starting at verse 3, which says, For though we live in the world, we do not... Can't read. For though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. So we'll focus more so on verses 3 through 5, and specifically the part of verse 5 that says, and we take captive every thought and make it obedient to Christ. So we have the ability to take captive the thought, those things that are contrary to what we said we're going to do, those things that are contrary to our goal, and specifically the will of God. Take it captive. Take captive that thought. Don't allow your mind to just stay there and wander and roam around. Take captive the thought. Bring your mind back into submission and get it back to that made up mind place that we talked about in tip number 1. Don't just stay down in the dumps. Capture whatever thought is taking you away from your goals and get back on track. Okay? You have the ability to do that, to capture every thought that is contrary to the will of God and make it obedient. You have control over your mind. So capture those thoughts that are not getting you anywhere, that are not helping you to progress in your goals. So tip number 1, make up your mind. Tip number 2, capture every thought that is not consistent with what you are trying to do. And tip number 3, dwell on or think about things that are above. Okay? So as you are capturing the thought, as you are making up your mind, make sure that your mind is focused on things that are above, things that are consistent with the will of God and the Spirit. There are so many scriptures that talk about what we as believers should be thinking about. In Philippians chapter 4 verse 8, the Apostle Paul says, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. So when you have negative thoughts and need to capture it with something, Think about whatever is pure and noble and praiseworthy, okay? Let that be what your mind is made up on. Colossians chapter 3 verse 2 says, "Set your minds on things that are above, not on earthly things." We are focusing and having our minds stayed on things above. And finally, Romans chapter 8 verse 5 says that for those who live according to the flesh set their minds on things of the flesh, but those who live according to the Spirit set their minds on things of the Spirit. So set your mind on things of the Spirit, the will of God, what is pleasing to God. Let that be what your mind is set on. Those things that are consistent with your goals, be consistent, be intentional about dwelling on those things, the things that are actually going to progress you forward. Scriptures to me seem to indicate that we have the choice of what we're going to set our mind on. We have incredible authority over our mind to make sure that it is consistent with the will of God and the things that we said we're going to set out to do. So, as you change your mind, as you change your mindset, as you're trying to be consistent in the things that you said you were going to do as far as your New Year resolution, make sure that you are making up your mind. Make up your mind about what you are setting out to do. Number 2, capture every thought that is contrary to your goals. And number 3, set your mind on things above, okay? Set your mind on the things that are actually going to keep you pushing forward towards your goals. This is my first tip, my first thing that we need to change if we're going to be more consistent with keeping up with fulfilling our New Year resolutions. All right, thing number 1, change your mind. I would love to know what you all think about this. Have you changed your mindset? Do you think that changing our mindset is imperative to us actually fulfilling our New Year resolution? I would love to know some tips that you all have for changing your mind or keeping your mind stayed focused on what you are trying to accomplish. Y'all have a wonderful week. Make sure you tune in next Monday for the next thing that we should change in order to be more consistent with our New Year resolution. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time for a little TLC. Bye-bye.